Hello, everybody, and welcome. And let me just warn you before we start that you are not going to want to be one. This is not one of these videos that you're going to kind of just bounce onto, watch a couple of minutes, and then leave. You're going to want to watch this interview because I've got a very special treat in store for you today. So I have with me Virginia Drake, whom is an absolutely amazing speaker. We've had some amazing conversations, and I've heard things I've never heard anywhere else. And she's just so interesting to listen to. I can listen to her all day long. So you're going to really enjoy this interview today. So be sure to definitely continue watching, and you're not going to regret it. So Virginia and I, we've had some fabulous conversations, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the description, a little bit about her and what she does and her background in the description down below if you'd like to read that. But Virginia, welcome and thank you so much for being here with me today for
Thank
my
you
for my
for
viewers.
thank you for inviting me.
Oh yeah, you're very welcome, and I'm very excited as we proceed through this. Okay, so well, the topic that we're going to discuss today, as is my Facebook page title, it's energy vampires, and so we're going to start off. Before we go into that discussion, what is exactly an energy vampire? What does it mean? So, Virginia, that's my first question to you: is what is an energy vampire? And a secondary question is, are they? Are we just talking about people, or are there energy vampires, entities that are outside our realm? So, if you want to explain your view on that, that would be great.
Well, energy vampires to me, a lot of times, because I had a bad husband,
Husband.
and what happened? See, they're coming back to me again. Um, what it does is he takes your energy. It literally takes your energy. It doesn't like my ex husband
My ex-husband.
was a narcissist. And that's an energy stealer right there because it lowers your consciousness and your vibration to the levels that you feel depressed. So it can be a vampire energy. Vampire could be something that you're watching, especially in movies. If takes you back into a different vibration. Fear is an energy vampire. But most of the time that I have seen real energy vampires, as I witnessed a man who was a true energy vampire, truly. I was in a session or with a group of people. We were doing ayahuasca, which they said was ayahuasca. It wasn't, but I could see things. And I mean, this man literally, we were all in this circle and we were all kind of walking around. And I kept seeing that he was going over to this one woman and he was going, and I could see him taking the energy of her aura off of her. And then I'd see her go,
So it was deliberate.
yeah, oh, yeah, oh, that's what his job was, is to do that. So
Wow.
it at first, and I'll be honest with you, because I didn't understand it. I'd never seen it like that. I've felt it when somebody lowers your vibration and steals some of your energy, but I've never seen a person do it.
Mm.
And so when I watched him, I kept watching it. And then Spirit said, go over there and offer your hands free energy to him. And I thought,
Mm.
first I remember thinking, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't think that's what I want to do. And Spirit kept saying, do it. Well, I didn't have any idea when I offered my hands to him, he went like this. It scared him. And I thought,
Oh,
why would he be frightened by someone giving it free? Well, that's a whole entity right there, is because they don't want it free. They want to steal
mm.
it. And the
Oh
more
yeah.
they steal, the more empowerment they've got because they've pulled your eye, the wool over your eyes, basically. And I sat and
Mm.
watched him. I chased that man all over that house, and he finally had to leave because he was so scared of me.
Wow. Wow.
And that's when I knew I have empowerment over them because they don't like love. They don't like people to be kind. They want people to be depressed. They suck the energy right off of them. And it takes a long time to get that back in. And so I
Mm.
became very aware. Well, like in a crowd of people, if I'm in an airport, I'll watch people and then I raise my frequency above them so they can't work, they can't maneuver on somebody. And
Ah.
I saw that, there was an interview, a woman that came off of the plane, or we got off a plane because there was somebody sitting next to her that she was calling them, they're not normal, they're not right. Well, it's reptilian energy. And he could change his eyes. And I have seen people change their eyes, but I've seen myself be changed, my identity. So
Mm.
we are just particles in this big universe that we have formed ourselves to a belief system thinking that's who we are. Our
Mm.
bodies are not what we think it is. This is just a vessel, but that vessel can
Yeah.
change right in the middle of particles. When I'm doing a big session with somebody, it usually frightens them at first because they don't they have
Yeah.
no idea.
Right.
It scares them. And
It does.
but we can, yeah, it well, we were a friend of mine was talking this morning, and there was a woman named Mrs. Master, and Mrs. Flightmaster was a psychic and a medium, similar to what Danielle is. And I never got to meet her. My mother met her. A lot of people in my town got to meet her, but I got to meet her granddaughter. And when her granddaughter brought a friend here,
Mm.
Mrs. Whitemaster showed up and turned my TV on without the remote. The remote's over here. Nobody's talking about the TV. I was working with this other woman, and the TV turned on, and I knew it was Mrs. Flightmaster.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, it scared the two women that were in there with me. They turned around, and you could almost see them go. And then her daughter or granddaughter said, "That's my grandmother." And I said, "Oh, absolutely." I went to
Mm.
see the granddaughter, over to her house, and she gave me several of her things, her picture of her and her book. Now, Mrs. Flightmaster had a very different take on what she saw. She had a book and it was in German, and it was
Mm.
different. And it almost felt almost well, cultist, very cultist. And I thought maybe I wasn't supposed to meet her. But I know she met a lot of people in this town that would go to her, and how she paid what you feel. And I started doing pay what you feel a long, long time ago. And she told a friend that anybody that's charging a fee is incorrect, because if they're charging to give it back to them freely at their choice, it changed everything in the vibration. I did not know that, but I was doing it already. And this
Mm.
woman said that to me. Said, "I met Mrs. Flightmaster, and this is exactly what she said. So you must be the real deal, whatever that means. You're the real deal." I mean,
Mm.
I've had profound experiences beyond, and I'm very grateful for it. I really am blessed that I've seen darkness and light, shadows. You know, they're all around us. And
Mm.
plants talk. I mean, I had a group in here the other day. In my plants, I have a lot of plants in my room, and they arched over us, and you could see them,
Mm.
and they were helping us.
Right.
And I don't think people realize the greatness that we really are here. Now,
Mm.
I have, when we're talking about, a lot of people talk about energy vampires or wolves, and I have seen wolves, real
Mhm.
people that turn into a wolf. I've seen, I was brought into an area in Ohio that they had a vortex. And they asked me to go into this forest area, and sure enough, there's a vortex. And the trees are going to be all, and they're geodramatic, they're not thermal, they're geo. Well, it's what I used to teach with kids. You could take beans and put them upside down, like they would be going into the earth, or you can flip them up and they'll still go up because that's
Mm,
electromagnetics.
mm.
And I was doing that with kids way before I knew what I was doing. So everything around us is energy. Our body is energy. So if you would
Yeah.
bring energy and you're in fear of that energy, or you have hair that comes up on your body, then you've already lowered your frequency to their level.
Yeah.
So the minute you feel this feeling in your neck or your hair, because I used to have hair that would get up on my arm and come up in my neck, um, and it would scare
And
me.
it would scare me.
And we
And
can't be into fear. Fear is the worst thing in the world. It changes everything and it gives them power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
So it
got to,
sounds like there's good energy, there's bad, and people that elate us. But you know what is the first takeaway I'm getting from this is that, I think most of the time we give people the benefit of the doubt that they're not intending to steal your energy, but they do so anyway. And I
yes.
have had many experiences where I've had this overwhelming urge to take a nap after an encounter with someone.
Yes.
More recently, I felt my blood sugar drop so much, and I had to have an energy bar, and and then I felt okay. So yeah, definitely, this is very real.
Oh,
But
yeah.
just yeah, I have a question, which I'm very keen to know your take on this. Okay,
Okay.
so if we go back, like, in like old religions, like way back in time, right? And
Mhm.
it's not exclusive to Abrahamic religions; it's also Eastern religions. But what about, animal sacrifice, right? So animal sacrifice in the Bible, it says that it was a sweet-smelling savior to his nostrils. Now, animal sacrifice has always sounded very strange to me, and I wonder if it's an energy thing rather than let's have a barbecue kind of a thing. I mean, what's your thoughts on animal sacrifice? It just seems so bizarre, and I think there's a connection.
But let's go all the way back to the Egyptians.
Okay.
They weren't doing animal sacrifices, they were doing humans. Let's go
Oh
all the way
yeah.
back to the Aztecs, human
Oh yeah.
sacrifice. That's a blood thing because you could, if you, have you ever smelt blood? I have.
Uh, yes. Yeah. Hmm.
And it does have a distinct smelling. Only reason why I know this, when I was 11 years old, my father was robbed and he got hit in the back of the head with a tire tool. And I
Wow.
mean, he survived it. But when he came home, they had stitches, but he had his clothes still. My mother handed me his jacket and his shirt and didn't tell me how it was going to be for a little 11-year-old. And I remember this very well. I didn't know you're not supposed to put hot water on fresh blood or on a shirt or clothing. What it did is the energy of the hot came up into my face and I smelt blood and I passed out.
Oh wow.
I was a little 11-year-old girl. And you know what? I thought to myself, why does my mother hate me to do this? Why would
Mm.
she want me? And then I was a veterinarian tech. So as soon as you cut that to the blood opening up, you can smell it. So there is an
Mm.
energy in this beyond. And what they used to do, it's not about the animal necessarily, it's about the human and the animal because they would eat the liver and the heart because that's how they believed that they got energy or power from that animal or that person. This
Right.
is the whole,
Sorry.
yeah.
And who would eat the liver or the heart? The gods or the
Well,
people doing the sacrifice?
the people who, well, in the Egyptians, it would be the Pharaoh would
Hmm.
eat the liver. That's why you see the Akabic jars. They would have liver in there, they'd have organs. Now, if you understand, I hear organs, I hear vibration, and my heart talked to me one time after I had my near death experience. When I had a heart
Hmm.
attack, my heart talked to me and told me. But when I'm working with people, when I used to do a lot of table work and go into people, and the organs would tell me what was going on. That's
Mm.
frequency. So
Mm.
every organ does work in connection to the wholeness of it.
Mm.
So
I see.
that's
Yeah.
that was my,
Yeah.
I look back at all my experiences, even when I was little, I realized everything was being given to me so I'd be ready. I am what I am right now. Very clear, knowledgeable, but understanding of the truth of how we work electrically.
Mm. I see.
That's why
Okay.
they do it.
Yeah. So, and so what you're saying is it was the blood that was the significant part of the sacrifice, and that the energy was derived from the blood, not the act of the death. But like, would you say that there was any kind of energy vampirism derived from the suffering of an
Oh,
innocent?
the fear of the victim, an animal
Mm.
or a human, that's the endocrine. That's what they're getting for is the endocrine. That is what you can see because fear creates that adrenaline. And
Mm.
animals, when they're going into stock, I used to do stockyards with animals, and you can feel the fear in the stockyard.
Wow.
So when you
So
understand
you
fear,
understand.
then you know what they're doing is they're raising fear. Then every time you eat meat, that's why we have stopped blessing everything. You, when you go
Hmm.
to McDonald's, you don't bless. You don't. Blessing is a big deal because when you bless things, you change its energetic understanding of how you're going to be receiving it.
Oh yeah, I agree. And
Yeah,
water too.
yeah, and you
Mm.
are. This is why they don't want us to know any of this, because you're eating cows or whatever. A lot of vegans say, "Well, I don't ever." Well, and when they eat the plant, they don't think the plant doesn't. I've seen my plants or my flowers go. Ooh. So
Oh.
and I tell them if I'm going to eat something out of my garden, I tell them I want to thank you for nourishing me. This is a blessing.
Mm.
Everything is alive. Everything is frequency. It's not going to be alive like we think, but we have been so misled on who we are. It's to me it's just sad because
Yeah.
we are so much more. We don't have to
I agree.
sacrifice another person or another being. That sacrifice, because I have several clients that are hunters. And this guy came to me personally. He'd been working with me about 5 or 6 years. And he said, I want to hunt turkeys. There was a turkey season. And he said, I know you're going to disagree. I said, no, I'm not. I said, ask the turkey to sacrifice itself to you. And he
Hmm.
called me back a couple of days later and he said, it worked. I started calling the turkeys. There was a big crew, a whole bunch of them in a field. And one walked out and went straight to him and looked right at him and let him
Oh
shoot.
wow.
But he said, what I felt was it sacrificed itself. It said, but I need you to take my
You
feathers
take my finger
and everything that I've done. Please save
please take
that, you know, preserve it in the way it should be preserved. And that's how
it's wow. The turkey asked for its feathers and
yeah,
you cut out a little bit
he felt it.
its
He did.
organs.
He doesn't have the same thing that I understand because when he was telling me, he said, I just had this peace that came over me and I knew it was more important that he grounded it up in meat. He took its feathers. He did everything. He did everything he could to use the wholeness of that bird.
Hmm.
And he
Yeah.
said, that's more important. And he said, is that true, Jenny? I said, absolutely. That's exactly because that's what sacrifice is. They're willing to give away, themselves up for someone else or
Yeah.
another
Right.
animal. Like they make Africa. I sat down and looked at Animals don't kill just out of killing. They kill to
Mm.
eat.
Yeah.
We're the savages. We kill
Mm.
for no
Oh yeah.
reason. And
Yeah.
so we're the savages, not the animal world. None of
Yeah.
them.
So I just thought like maybe the trophy hunters, they hunt animals that aren't going to be eaten for the fun.
We're going to be
But and
melted.
with yours, okay. But okay, so here's a question. Here's a question. You might think it's a silly question, but a lot of people watching will think this is a very, very valid question. I have some ideas of my own, but I would love to hear your thoughts. So on this earth, there's the animal kingdom, and nature is very savage, right? And some people ask, if a loving God created this earth, why is it so that in order for life to survive, it has to eat one another? So, you look at the carnivorous part of the animal kingdom, that and you watch sometimes wildlife documentaries, and there would be like this savage, like they you got the predator and the prey, and then they eat them alive. And so why is it that way on the earth? Like, how did we get here? Did it, when the earth was perfect, was it not that way? I believe so, but what are your thoughts?
Well, at one time, we should never had a body. When we came
Right.
back in here, if we didn't have a body, we wouldn't have to need to eat. The only reason
Hmm.
why you eat is because you have to have a physical body to be fed. We were
Hmm.
never supposed to come down here in a body. We came down here in spirit. And
Hmm.
you can breathe because breathologists don't eat anymore. They don't even have to. Well, some yogis have never drank in the last 30 or 40 years. So why do we have to have it? They recognize their innateness of their spirit. They don't need
Hmm.
all of that.
No.
So that's one reason we came down here and we fell into the earth and we got lower frequency. That's why you've got a body.
Yeah.
And that's
And
why
what
you
about
have
the animal kingdom?
same thing. We
Same
probably
thing.
birds and all of that were the same thing. We didn't need all, the Garden of Eden, when they're talking about the Garden of Eden, they're
Hmm.
talking about the mind. The
Hmm.
garden is the mind. So if you're living in a world of the mind and frequency, why would you need birds or food or anything? You don't.
Hmm.
You would be truly in the divineness of what God is all about. Goodness over doubt. Stop doubting yourself over that. But
Hmm.
now we're lowered our frequency and they've made it very clear how they're doing it. They are
Hmm.
lowering our meat. They're lowering everything down to the levels of going down to being human. And
Hmm.
human at that time was of flesh. We didn't need flesh. I mean, when I crossed over, I didn't have a body, but I could breathe. I didn't even think about food because food didn't exist. It only existed on the earth.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
walking in many dimensions and not even aware that you're in them. The more people
Hmm.
would ever, bring their consciousness back up into the frequency, they wouldn't. I know I changed my eating when I had my near death experiences. I stopped eating certain things. I couldn't eat. I was just telling somebody like Cool Whip. I don't know if you understand what Cool Whip was. I love Cool Whip, and it looks.
Yeah.
It's all chemicals. Majority
Yeah,
of what
it is.
you're eating is chemicals. You're not eating anything but what they have given you through the chemistry of it. So
Hmm.
I can't even, when I put my hands on something, I really run energy through my food. When I go into a restaurant, I raise my frequency up because
Hmm.
whatever's going on, if the chef that's doing it, if he's mad or she's mad, you're going to get that anger. So I
Hmm.
make sure I raise everything up around me to make it satisfy me vibrationally to a higher
Hmm.
consciousness. We're most of
Yeah.
these people that's running around. A lot of times, there's a lot of soulless people that you're seeing right now. more than you've ever
Mm.
seen.
Right.
You can see them. That's why
Yeah.
they call them zombies.
Yeah.
Soulless.
Now these soulless people, are these soulless people, do they have the needs to feed on energy
Yes.
to
That's why
as their sustenance?
zombies want to eat flesh.
Mm.
Uh,
Right, right.
they're not, their movies are very well done because they have to tell us everything. And when I saw the zombies coming in, and I think it came in the 90s, because I watch all timelines. And
Mm.
we had in the 80s, we had pandemics.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, go back and look. When I first started watching movies, they were
Hmm.
having aliens. We were talking disaster of the earth. And then they
Hmm.
moved it. Then we had Disney came in with, you know, Bane hunters killing things. And I remember it affected me as a little girl. You never
Hmm.
saw the mother deer killed, but you heard the gun, and then you heard Bambi cry. So that they lowered it
Yeah,
down.
that's amazing. Yeah. And it's interesting that in Hollywood and what have you, there is a lot of is it called predictive programming?
Yes.
And revealing, hiding the truth in plain sight, which is interesting because some say, and I don't know, but some say that there's also like very top elites in that industry that would maybe do anti-aging, and it involves certain creams and certain. You were talking about the fear and adrenaline. What do you know of that?
Well, when I was, because you got to understand, I went to the movies a lot. My father only came in on the weekends. So I
Hmm.
got to go to our little town theater. Now, some of this stuff I should never been watching. I was too young. Now, this is black and white, but there was a movie called what was the Witch Doctor. I can't
Hmm.
find it. If I could find it, and it was about a movie star. She was like 35 or 40 years old, and she was starting to age. And some of her agent brought her to Africa to work with this witch doctor. And what he did is he killed a man right in front of him, but he had a ring on his finger that had a hook. And he hit that guy in the back of the neck, and he immediately sucked out all of the spinal fluid out of fear, because they had put him in a cage kind of thing. I mean, this is a little
Wow.
girl watching this. I did not understand. And then handed it in a cup to this woman, and she drank it, and she turned
Oh,
into.
wow.
Now go back to the movie with Meryl Streep and Goldie
Hmm.
Hawn. And these are two movie star people, and they take the same thing. That was in the 80s or the 90s.
Oh, wow,
So,
that's amazing. Yeah, I'd heard something about that.
well, and there's
Yeah.
several movies about the Androcom. There's they I mean, I can run some movies down through you to let you look at them, because they're telling you exactly what the truth is. And children are easier because you can scare them. I mean, they torture these children. I don't think people have any idea what they do to these kids, but they do the same damn thing with animals. Put them in a stockyard. They know they're going to
Mm.
die, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
feel it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they do.
And
Yeah,
you
I
can,
mean,
oh, yeah.
that's close to my heart because I am vegan. So yeah, they feel it the same as us.
And it's no different.
Um, no, it's not.
They've
And
been
I just thought even in Disney, like and I've only just thought of this. I never thought of it before. But what was it called? Monsters Inc. That
yes,
animation,
that's
and
a
they would go into the
wonderful
bedrooms.
movie. That is a true movie.
Is
You
it?
need
Oh,
people
okay.
to
Explain.
run a city. They were making people on fear to run a city. And then they
Yes.
flipped it upside down and made it laughter. And then the
Mm. Oh,
city was
yeah.
different. I had a client that called me up and said, "You got to come over here. I want you to listen to this." And I thought, I don't do cartoons. That cartoon was profound because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
exactly the truth. And I used to have things that came out of my closet. They would come through the closet. Remember, they would through doors. They knew how to go into the portal doors. So these energies could go into the door and then create themselves back in to a child.
Wow.
That's the red eye.
It's crazy. Yeah, I can see it's true. But it's also, I think it's also true that we can flip the energy in the opposite way and derive the same energy and power, the laughter. Because, when I've spoken, because like, yeah, there's energy vampirism, but there's also inspiration to be derived as well. And sometimes, someone will come to you and they'll say some nice things to you, and you feel elated, and you've,
Empowered.
derive energy, and that's the word, empowered. Yeah, very much so. So it works both ways, I suppose. There's two sides to the coin.
Absolutely.
We
But
can,
we're
yeah.
flipping now. Everything is being flipped to fear.
Mm.
Now, when I first woke up in 1998, you know what I had to practice? I had to learn how to belly laugh because
Yeah,
I didn't know how
right.
to laugh. I was an only child and I was raised as an adult. So I never really became childlike. My higher self said, you need to learn to laugh, belly laugh. When you hear kids' laughters, especially if they're around puppies, or you just kind of get a real joyful feeling of that, that giggling inside. You can feel the vibration. Now
Oh
think
yeah.
about if you're hurting a child, how that flips upside down
Oh yeah.
because
Oh,
they're
very
in.
much so.
And this is why God said, do not intervene with my children. He's not, Spirit is not talking just a child. He's talking about us. We are the children. We're very small minded compared to what God is. God's not an entity. God is a light. It's an intelligence that's so much more massive. We've been told that, that make God look more like a man. I remember the first time when I recognized the world of man has told us that's what God is. Very evil. God is like a father, a hard father. That's the Old Testament. But when they brought in Jesus, they had to bring Jesus in because that's the opposite. And the writers of our Bible intervened incorrectly. They wrote the Bible a lot of times the way they wanted because they took a lot of the chapters out.
Oh
And
yeah, they did.
yeah, they took it out because they didn't want you to know that you really could have another life. You had your soul is very much alive. That's a part of the spirit of us, but they're stealing our souls. That's what they want.
Absolutely. And
They want
also, I've noticed that, like, if you listen to the way people pray and the way people are taught to pray, very disempowering. Like, I'm not worthy, I'm a sinner, I'm so sorry. I remember I was raised in religion, and like, I was always in guilt. I always felt guilty for little misdemeanors that I did through the day.
exactly
And
right.
then you take that into prayer, and it's like, it's very heavy. And yeah, like, obviously the correct way is to affirm, and be grateful, give thanks, this kind of thing. That's you walk away feeling good. But a lot of people are praying from a real place of sorrow, even praying like, oh, my auntie's sick in the hospital, she's going to die, oh please God, please make her better. And it's like, there's such sorrow inside, and it's like, it's a horrible energy. It's desperate, sorrowful, doubt, fear. There's all that inside, and this is the way people are praying. Now, I wonder, do you believe, and I think you do, but um, that there is a loving God, right?
Oh,
But would you say that there's an imposter God that has tried to hijack the position of God, that has tried the opposite, trying to get us to be disempowered in our prayers, and like, steal our fear and our energy, and demands the animal sacrifices, and the blood sacrifice and everything. So what are your thoughts?
well, it happened to me when I was 16 years old. I was a Catholic, and
Hmm.
my father was dying, and my best friend, it was 15 years old. She was dying
Hmm.
because of a car accident. So immediately I went, the candles were being lit in the church, and I was the only one there. And I
Hmm.
was praying for God, Jesus. Jesus was on
Mm.
the cross, and that's another
Mhm.
thing. Well, that's another story. But I remember saying, "Please, God, please save them, make them better." And literally, Jesus walked down off of that cross, went across the room, and came through my pew because I was the only one there, and pushed me up against that and said, "I've already taken care of that." Now, as a 16-year-old that had no understanding about God at that time, they both died. So I went into the darkest hell because I was going back in, I went into college, and that's where I almost got raped 3 times. That's when I was running with the wrong crowd, because that was hell. Because I didn't believe in God anymore. I didn't believe that God even existed because God lied as far as I was concerned. Now, what I got an opportunity of is when I died in 1998 at 46, Jesus came to me after that near death experience and said, "I did tell you," and showed me, because it was like I was standing in another room but watching them in another room. I mean, I was watching
And I was
everything,
watching every
and it was like, wow. And Gail first,
film
she was
first. She
and she was in a coma, but her family was all there, and they were,
out there
it was horrible watching them
watching.
because she wasn't going to make it. She had half her head gone from the car accident. And
Mhm.
Jesus looked at me and said, "I told you I took care of it."
I took care of it.
And I thought,
And I
if I hadn't let her go and do what
Mhm.
you were asking for, those people would be imprisoned in her coma and never
Yeah.
live for her again. And then when I
Mhm.
saw my father came back to me and said, "I had to die to wake you up to do the work that you came here for our generations."
Right.
And I went, "Oh
Mhm.
my gosh." But a 16-year-old that's asking for a God to fix it is so different than when you really see the real truth in it.
Mm.
Because anybody that's crossing over, that's dying, and people are praying for them, they feel the prayers. You
Mm.
really feel the sincerity, the love. As you're
Mm.
lifted up, you can feel their prayer. So it's prayer is energetic. But when you're
Mm.
asking God to do something for you, you're not asking for the divine plan, you're asking for the human plan. Human plan
Yeah.
is not what you want. You want the
Yeah.
divine.
Yeah. Right. I see. I
Yeah.
see. And interestingly, like, there's one thing that's consistent throughout the New Testament, the Gospels, when Jesus, he was going around healing a lot of people and he was praying a lot, but never once did he pray for a sick person.
No,
He
because
didn't.
he was even sick.
He just said, "You go your way, you're well. Your faith has made you well." And so, that ought to be an indication that we have the power within us to take authority over our circumstances, situations, sickness,
Hmm.
and But actually, sorry, just that kind of like pivoting a little bit, because I think this would be very interesting. Um, Jesus was like sacrificed on a cross, and the mainstream idea is that he was the Lamb of God, meaning that he was like a sacrificial lamb, and that he was the ultimate sacrifice to appease God, um, of in that sacrifice, and that to eradicate sin. There's something seriously wrong with that idea, but if you have an alternative idea as to if he died, first of all, why he died, to replace that narrative that we've been taught, which is, pretty disturbing. Like,
I think it is.
what's your thoughts?
Well,
You think it is?
I
Okay.
got to meet Jesus for 18 months after I had my near death experience. You know what he said to me? When are they going to take me off the cross?
Oh
When are they going
yeah,
to
right.
take me off the cross? He said, "If you understand what the process was, I died,
Hmm.
but I live again eternally. But they keep
Hmm.
throwing me back on the cross, and all you see in a church, anywhere,
church.
taunting him on the cross. And he would get mad. He said, why don't they see death is a new beginning and a new understanding? But they keep bringing him down to death. Because who's running this world today are the death cult. They love death. So when I started seeing, like in COVID, I saw the same thing in Vietnam. Every day we sat at lunch, dinner, and we watched how many people died in Vietnam. We've seen trauma. I've seen assassinations. I mean, my generation saw a lot of bad, bad things. We're traumatized. The minute you're traumatized, you've already lowered your frequency down to the level of fear.
True.
So they kept us in fear, because what I think is happening with COVID, because think about when we were in COVID, we couldn't be together. They don't want us together. We have empowerment. When two or more gather, changes the world. And they know
true.
that. So that separated everybody immediately to make everybody afraid of each other. I saw things in America that I never thought I would see. When people would start telling me that I need to get a vaccine, that I was going to kill people, I knew they weren't American. They were programmed.
Right.
Because America Constitution is, you have a right to say anything as long as you don't disturb others. So I isolated myself because I knew people would attack me because they knew I had not been vaccinated. So I didn't even see my next door neighbors for almost 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, really, people were very passionate over that whole vaccine thing,
Oh,
weren't they?
they did it. That I really admired and that I really believed in, as people, they attacked me. And I have a different take on all this because I don't believe anything like that. I knew I'd already done the research. I watched my father die. I saw everything before it all happened. I knew it was going to happen because I was been doing this for 25 years. Near death experience. I saw it. I didn't understand exactly what it was because I started telling people about what was going on and they thought I was crazy. That's my family, my friend. I lost a lot of people when I started. Now that I am almost 72 years old, but I'm really not 72. If I go back, we got to go back on when we were fertilized in the egg. We've been told that is, that's so wrong too. They've lied. And when you start peeling off the onion, I love it when they say peel off. They better start peeling off a lot more young and peels or skin because it's so deep, it's so thinned out. When you go into thinning out your body, your soul, small threads, little peels, because they've lied to us so much. And they've lied.
Because they want
to wake up. Well, if we woke up and knew really who we are, I think that we would sit here and watch this BS. They wouldn't even acknowledge this BS. And if you don't acknowledge it, it can't exist. If you don't believe in it, it can't exist. And they know that. That's why the Queen in England was very much smarter than the Yahoos that's over there with her. She's gone because she worried about that because she knew they had a reputation that they had to maintain of who they were better. And Andrew, William, Charles, they're all a part of it. Harry, they're all a part of this. But they're Germans. I mean, and you're English. They're Germans. I did the research. They're Germans, but they came back and changed their name. And the Pope, that's the Jesuits. The Jesuits are running the show because they believe the Pope is the one. And if you remember, I think, weren't you a Catholic? Were you a Catholic?
Me?
Uh-huh. Or were you a Protestant? No. Okay, you're a Protestant from England.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when they did that, the Jesuits took over. And the Jesuits were knocked out for 83 countries. Hitler was trying to take the Jesuits out, and they kept calling them Jews. They weren't Jews. They're Babylonian Jews. That's the Canaanites. This goes all the way back to the Bible. The Bible is exactly right, but they flipped it upside down in a different way. Yeah, we're in a spiritual battle,
Yeah.
and the more you
I, I,
wake
I agree.
and understand energy and vibration and frequency, you can change the world with
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thought. So why are we
I,
not doing it? Why I always say why if you understand all of this, and I hear a lot of people in that. I mean, I've done a lot of radio and I've done a lot of speaking, and I hear them and they still don't get it.
mm,
I mean,
yeah.
I stopped doing a lot of speaking for a long time because the people that were getting books sold, they weren't telling the truth. They were telling their
Telling
truth,
their truth
but it wasn't
that it
true.
wasn't.
They weren't talking
Yeah.
frequency. They were, and I did the near death experience with some of these, community people or people that wanted me to come in. I started telling the truth and scared them. And they've had near death experiences, but most of them have scientific understanding of death. They never met the death that I had. I went out to the universe. I was so far out that I didn't know if I was ever going to get to ever
Was
to
ever
come.
going to get to ever to come.
Wow.
It's amazing work, but you got to get out of your own mind because your mind's been so programmed and lowered to that degree. Like I was a teacher, so I thought everything was copacetic. I thought, they were telling me the truth. When I started finding out, I got angry first as a teacher that I had lied to my students.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And see, I think teachers that are waking up, that's why they want to get out of teaching because they know that it's incorrect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it must be pretty. Yeah, it must be pretty bad if you're teaching and you realize you've been teaching a lie or teaching
Oh,
the wrong thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was hurt because I'm a truth teller and I was devastated. And then you go and tell your students now that they're in their 40s. And I told them that, I mean, I've told a few of them, they just look at me, and this is exactly truth in my town. They say, well, you had that heart attack and you didn't have enough oxygen in your brain. So you really did. And I looked at them, I said, no, I found out the truth.
Found out the truth.
Mhm.
I mean, it hurt
Yeah.
me. I know people that I thought really loved me or they respected me. No, when I started talking in this crazy world and what was going on, they dismissed me very quickly.
Mm.
And it hurt me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it devastated me for a long time. My family devastated me. But I knew what I had seen was the truth. And I wasn't going to go against. One thing I can say, the Holy Spirit, and I call it the Holy Spirit because it is,
Mhm.
knew that I was strong enough to stand against whatever it was. And the Holy Spirit knew that I had a big mouth. And if I
Mhm.
found out the truth, I was going to tell it no matter whether it made people happy or not. I'm not there to make them feel good. I'm there to tell them the truth.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people on this earth are looking for a religion or a philosophy that has a happy ending or a happy, is happy. But maybe the truth is not always been rosy, you know.
It's not.
So it
It's,
hasn't.
it's devastating. It took me 5 years to really look at the truth in my
Mhm.
family. I thought, we had the American dream. We had the big house. We had the
Mhm.
cars. I mean, the great cars. We had a swimming pool in the backyard. I had 11 acres. I had animals. I mean, we were walking, but we were empty because we got all
Mhm.
of this, what the dream of the American dream said. You're going to have all of this. Well, I had all of that, but I was empty
Mhm.
inside because I
Yeah.
didn't have the
Right.
spirit of God in it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I was going to church 5 days a week when I was a Catholic teacher. So I should
Mhm.
have been getting a lot of Jesus and God, but no,
Yeah.
And then I found out that my husband at the time had been molested by a priest. I was devastated,
Mm.
absolutely devastated. And that's when I got really, really mad. And I took a, I went to the Catholic Church and we won.
Mhm.
And,
Right.
and I started going more, and more Catholics were coming to me, asking a lot of questions. Um, I remember a man that had never met before. I kept seeing him, and he was homosexual, and he had helped founding. He did a founding of this church, and they didn't want him to come back because he had now announced that he was gay, or he was a homosexual, and he was
Yeah.
devastated. And he had flown in from Texas, and I was at Mammoth Cave, which you all need to see Mammoth Cave. That's the largest cave center or system than Russia. And we go all the way underneath. And he came to see that, but he ended up meeting me. And we talked for 2.5 hours. And I said, you go back to your church and you stand in there and you tell him how you feel. And he did.
Mm.
Now, I never met that man again, never talked to him ever again. But that's how I end up meeting people, either where I see them in the press or see them on an airplane or in an airport. And they kind of stick out in a crowd, popping in. You think, God, and then sure enough, you'll get to meet them because
Mm.
they're calling your frequency as much as their frequency is calling me.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Beautiful thing, but
mm.
most people can't see it because they go into fear. And I mean, I've seen some dark, dark things, believe me,
Mm.
but I'm not
Yeah.
afraid.
No. So we've got about 8 minutes left till we hit the 1 hour mark. But I just want to revisit something that we touched on just a little while ago, if that's okay with you, because then we kind of like digressed. But so you said that Jesus had said, "I wish they take me off the cross." Yeah, so like basically Jesus, he died. The official story is that he died for some strange reasons of atoning for our sins that we didn't, that people many thousands. Okay, so my question is like, was there a purpose to his death, and if so, what was it? What would be the true story of Jesus' death?
Well, the Jesus is that he was telling the truth, that he was empowering people, that they could heal.
Yeah,
He what only thing that he did, remember the man that had the blindness and he took the mud and put it in the man's eyes and then he said, "You're okay." Because
yeah,
we are expecting someone to save us.
hmm,
Nobody's going to save you. When you cross over, there is nobody there. You're there by yourself with your soul. And your soul is
yeah,
going to look right at you and tell you the truth. You didn't hear me. You didn't follow me. I'm telling you. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, I remember there was a part in Jesus because I could go see Jesus. I mean, Jesus was with me for 18 months, but he'd also take me to places. He took me to places and said, "There's going to be a war in this place. You will not intervene with this. You do not look at this. You don't even understand it. Don't talk
mhm,
about it because we give it power." When somebody says we're going to go to war, everybody goes to where they do. They go to war in their mind before they go into the physical body. They
it's
need
true.
us, the elite, whatever you want to call them, elites, smarter ones, pain-ups, I don't know what you want to call them. They need us more than we need them.
Yeah,
They need our energy. So what they
mm,
do is they program you. We're gonna have a war. Everybody goes
mhm,
crazy. So then we create war. That's
mhm,
what Jesus. I remember when I was walking with Jesus, and there's a story. He's got a cloak, and he stops and
mhm,
he said, "Someone's touched my cloak." Well, he was
yeah,
so energetic. He knew the minute that lady touched him, she was healed by his frequency, not by her sickness or what he did. It's his frequency that was making people raise up.
yeah,
It had nothing to do with the flesh. It everything with the spirit. That's why they wanted him to die. And I saw him on the cross one time, and I was on the cross with him, and I was looking down, and I was, gambling the clothes of me and him. And he looked at me and said, "Let it go." And all of a sudden, I remember he dropped off the cross, and I walked right down with him, and I turned around, and my soul or my flesh was still on the crucifixion was on the cross. And so was his. And he turned around and he said, "That doesn't belong to you anymore. Walk with me in faith of truth and spirit." That's the crucifixion of the flesh.
Right. I see. Okay. Wow. Well, that's something I have to ponder. That's quite deep. Yeah. So basically, like, Jesus came and he was teaching, and he was teaching really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And healing, but really trying to tell us that this is what, because he said, "Greater things will you do." So he was really encouraging us to be as good or better than him.
Like him. He said, "Whatever I can do, Jenny, or everything that I can do, Jenny, you can do." But what were we told? We were told that's not possible. That can't be. I've seen it through me. I've watched them people coming in here. If they will believe, and belief is such another lie. You have to know what healing is. And I've had those experiences. I mean, hey, I've seen them. I've seen miracles. I've not been a miracle. So no, I came here for that reason, and that is to tell the truth. And I've stood in this. I mean, I've been spat on. I've been hit. I've told that if people told me I was crazy, and I will not budge off of what I know.
No. Right.
And this thing about energetic vampires and all, that's just another thing they bring in to scare you. Because when you understand, when you go up or go out, if you're in fear, they look like demons. If you come in love, and I mean really not human love of God, then they're angels. So it's all in the mind, and it's all programmed or controlled. Get out of the control, move out of that situation, and you're going to see miracles. And I know you will.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree completely. So unless I'm missing your point, like, what I gather is that, like, it was Jesus' life that was meaningful, not his death. And that he just died because he was crucified, because whatever, people wanted him dead.
Well, the Romans,
but, like, there was nothing.
Well, the Romans, they were very bad, and the Romans are the ones that backed up the Jews. If you really understand Roman philosophy, I mean, I studied Plato and Socrates came down to me and talked to me.
Socrates.
In the olive grove. He came to me and he said, "You've been with me for a long time." And the Romans knew this. They wanted the elite families. That's bloodlines. They don't want anybody else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Jesus was a threat to that system.
That's right. Yeah. And yeah. So, because I was just thinking. So basically, the Bible writers or editors, right? They were trying to desperately marry the Old Testament with the New Testament, connect the two nicely, and present it that, this is the complete works. They were trying to, but really there is no connection. I feel, because quite clearly Jesus is God was not. It was nothing. It was not the Old Testament God.
No.
And he said that quite plainly.
Yeah. And he said, this is not your God. I am not your God. He even said that. That's not my God.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't say that's a fake God. He just said, that's not my God.
Yeah.
He was telling you the truth all along. But they couldn't understand it because they were lower consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting to me that like people that follow Jesus, and I'm not doing this sarcastically or in a
I know.
patronizing manner, because people that follow Jesus, they're genuinely and sincerely following Jesus. I know that. But like ultimate, there there's millions of people, and it's not only the Christian religion, but also Muslims acknowledge Jesus as a very important person. He's a prophet,
Mhm.
and returning again, and very similar. There's only small differences, and it's just sad to me that rather than people honing in on Jesus's teachings, they have to be institutionalized and basically attribute all the credit to a psycho god, and
Mhm.
if I may say that,
Mhm.
that murdered and did all manner of energy vampire. Like, to get back to the topic of this video, because that's what I an energy vampire, and it's sad that all the credit is attributed to that, and it's not the truth.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, like you said, we can be empowered. um we don't have to institutionalize ourselves.
No. I've been living like this for 25 years, and the things I've got to see and get to do, I would never been able to do that if I had never had the first near death experience that I remembered. I would never been
Mm,
able to do that. To walk away from my family, and a lot of people get upset when I walked away from my family, but I had no other recourse. To follow really
mm,
God, the Holy
mm.
Spirit of who you are, the whole being that you are, I had to leave. I had to leave the world of man to go into the world of God. Now I walk in a different world. And a lot of people, I mean, I've disappeared in a crowd before. There's people said, well, you were there and you were gone. Well, that's because my frequency is so much higher than everybody else's. And near death experiences, you tend to go into a higher frequency because you've been out. And when
Yeah.
you're back in, you feel the prison. You can feel the prison. And a
Yeah.
lot of
So,
people that
yeah. Oh, yeah.
well, and a lot of people that had near death experiences, they have a hard time recreate, coming back because it doesn't feel the same anymore.
I
Now,
can
a lot of
imagine.
them they'll just let go and they'll go right back in, but they get sick because they come from a higher frequency. Then when they drop down into the lower frequency, that's when they get sick again.
uh yeah.
It's all about frequency.
Yeah, I don't think I'd fancy coming back.
Well, yeah,
But
but you might come back to change just like I did. I think I've been here many times, and but because in this lifetime I was my mother's seventh miscarriage. She never lived. I've drowned twice. I've had two strokes. I've had two heart attacks. I've had paralysis, but I'm back. And every time I come back with a higher frequency. So
yeah.
sometimes you got to leave those frequencies to get higher frequencies.
Yeah. What advice would you give the listeners who are just starting out to try and raise their frequency? Like, how does one make that start to raise their frequency? Like, some kind of practical advice. Do you have some?
Breath work. They don't know how to go to crystals and come down. They've got to start bringing the Holy Spirit in because all spirituality is breath. That's all.
Hmm.
So the more breath you take in, the more Holy Spirit you take in. So the more you change your cells, your particles, everything, you start raising it up into a higher consciousness. Everything up here starts moving differently. I mean, I want people to really understand this is real. I mean, my skull has been moved and I'll feel it shift out. I'm a shift shaper anyway. And it's the most amazing thing I've ever done because stillness, no thinking at all, stillness with breath. That's all they have to do. That's how I started out with just breath. I couldn't think of anything else. And I got very deep inside my body and laid in my own self and learned.
Hmm.
I was a universe within.
Mm. Mm.
It's
Oh
not
yeah.
hard. it's the hardest thing you'll ever do because you've been so programmed not to get still, not to think. They want you to
Yeah.
do that. But when
Yeah.
you go
True.
totally empty and just breath, you're working in a
Mhm.
different vibration. That's all they
Mm.
have to do.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. And you're right, it's not easy. When I manage to still myself and focus on my breath, I get the reward of such because it is a lovely feeling. But it's a challenge though, isn't it?
But
If
you've
you've
got to
had a
come
lot
in,
of
yeah, but
sorry?
you have to come back into the world of man because we work, we do jobs, we do this, we do that. So that takes that out. It takes spirit out of you when you have to come back to the world of man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
And that's
true.
what it was set up. There's two worlds going on here. Now, what world
Yeah,
would you choose?
yeah. I know.
Mhm.
Yeah, see. Well, it's gone over an hour, so I ought to, we ought to stop the recording and then I'll get that uploaded. We can chat after. But
Okay.
but thank you. It's been a great interview because I think that there's some amazing takeaways from that and inspiration. So thank you for coming on, Jimmy.
You're
And then the
so
recording.
welcome. I enjoy doing this because I know that you are willing to open up to help others open up. And I'm willing to do anything for those people because I want us to really learn what it's really like being here in the world of man
Mm,
versus the world of God. And there's no verse, it's only God.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
Okay, end.